Flashback is a 1990 comedy directed by Franco Amuri.
It stars Kiefer Sutherland as an FBI agent who is tasked with taking sort of an ageing hippie, to prison. He's been on the run kind of for 20 years for doing something back in the 60s, and the FBI have finally caught up with him. So he's taking him to lock him up basically. He's played by Dennis Hopper. This guy, what's his name? Huey Walker.
Yeah.
He's sort of a famous hippie counterculture kind of thing. You know, if you were in the 60s, you'll know the type. We weren't, so no idea. But
he's like a cult leader, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's like not a cult leader, but he's like a leader of a hippie group.
Yeah.
Thing.
So flower power, summer of love, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Peace, man. And obviously the 80s, a very different time. Sort of quite conservative in the US at the very least. So it's kind of sort of chalk and cheese situation where Keith Sutherland's character is very straight laced and watches what he eats and exercises and things like that. And whereas Huey is obviously completely different to that. That's how the comedy starts to begin with sort of a clash of personalities. And they're taking a train to where they're going. They're going to stop off on the way and then get a different train. But Huey tricks Jack. Jack Buckner is Kiefer Sutherland's character. He tricks him while they're on the train and manages to change clothes and assume his identity. And when they make this stop off and meet with the local police, they don't realise that this has happened because they're a bit inept, to be honest.
A bit.
So, then it becomes a sort of a chase. And the film kind of changes then because things happen and the local sheriff who's running for governor, he messes up big time by mistaking, not realising that they've switched places. And obviously Keither is drunk. I should mention that, that's why. He doesn't do anything and doesn't say, hey, hold on, I'm an FBI agent. Just to explain that. So and then as the film goes on, we sort of learn a bit about Kiefer Sutherland's past and, or Jack rather. Maybe he's not quite as different to Huey as we first thought.
The plot thickens.
It's quite. So, apart from Kiefer and Dennis Hopper, we've got quite a good cast there.
Yeah, there's a good cast. There's Cliff DeYoung,
Yep.
who plays the sheriff, the police, the small town sheriff. I know from the X-Files.
He's just one of those actors, he's just recognisable, but you don't necessarily remember his name or what it is you've seen him in. But I checked IMDb and he's the dad in Flight of the Navigator. And that's what I recognise him from.
Yeah, of course he is.
So, and obviously other stuff, he's done a lot of TV over the years.
Yeah, and you've also got Michael McKean, who's in there, obviously from Spinal Tap fame and many other films over the years. He has a kind of on-screen role with Richard Masur, who he turned up he was in Shoot to Kill that we covered quite a while ago now, and The Thing.
Yeah, he was in The Thing, yeah.
Please, isn't that a great film as well? They're kind of two. This film is. We'll talk about the film a little bit.
Yeah.
The film really, it's called Flashback, so it is a throwback to the end of the 60s. This film, I think they referenced 1967, and that's kind of the year. Or Dennis Hopper says that's like the year.
Summer of Love.
Summer of Love.
Yeah.
That was the one. So Michael McKean and Richard Masur play these two characters who have now grown up, and they're going to this bar, and the bar is kind of all, it's not very modern compared to now because we're now at the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, and but of course for them it's always too modern, and they got a bit drunk, and they're obviously reminiscing about their younger years back in the late 60s. You obviously get a lot of that in this movie. It's that kind of looking back at your youth, and obviously for the Americans, the 60s and the end of the 60s and the early 70s were, a very poignant time for them.
Yep.
Obviously, they had the Vietnam War going on, and there was this whole, Summer of Love and peace movement, and fighting against what they considered to be a wrong war, a war that shouldn't have taken place, and so for them that's a very significant time, and this film is obviously looking back at that and doing it on a kind of a humorous slant. I think the film's it's quite wacky, this film. It's quite silly at times, but I think it's got some really good stuff in there, specifically Dennis Hopper. Who's pretty amazing.
Obviously, one of his most famous roles is Easy Rider.
Yeah.
So he's almost playing, an older version of that
it's kind
character.
of. This film feels like it was kind of made for Dennis Hopper. He is, and there is obviously a couple of, you know, I think there's a moment where he says you can't get Easy Rider. You can't just walk into a VHS store and pick up Easy Rider. Obviously, linked back to his own movie, which he directed. I think he directed Easy Rider as well.
I don't know.
I think he directed it and was in it.
Possibly.
Yeah,
check it.
No, I'm pretty sure about that. I'm pretty convinced about that. So he is basically playing that role that he is famous for, and of course here it's 20 years on, and he's kind of running away from his past, I suppose, or trying to go back to his past, which of course he can't do anymore.
Well, he's writing a book, isn't he?
Well, he is writing a
about
book.
His life.
So is it a publicity stunt, or is it
Maybe.
something else? So yeah, he is that kind of that character that is you know, he's moved on in his life but can't move on in his life. I think we've covered characters like that before. He's really good and he's got some really great lines in there. And so the first thing, so when he meets Kiefer, I mean when he first introduced, he's lying in a cell bed, and he just seems out of his head the whole time, which he does. Seems to be in a lot of his films, but I think he was like kind of like that in real life as well, a little bit out of his skull most of the time. Specifically in the 60s. Quite a life that he led, that's
definitely,
for sure.
yeah.
And we covered River's Edge recently,
Yeah.
which of course he turned up in. And again, he's a similar kind of character in that.
So an aging hippie, yeah.
Aging hippie, yeah. And he did hundreds and hundreds of films in his career. I mean, right back to, he was in Rebel Without a Cause. Of course, there is a great line in this film, or Rebel Without Applause, he says in this film. It's one of those kind of films. There's a few like, you know, nice humorous nods back to things in the past. And it's very film that kind of, it's aware of its past, it's aware of its history, this film.
I mean, they do play Born to be Wild on the soundtrack a couple of times, which I thought maybe a little bit on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know he was in Easy Rider. You don't have to put Born to be Wild in it, but, you know.
I mean, any film that's going to be set in, any film that's either set in the 60s, 70s, or is referenced in the 60s and 70s, means you're going to get all this kind of stuff on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
So the soundtrack is filled up of things like, I mean, there's Jimi Hendrix are in there, Steppenwolf, Canned Heat, all those kind of classic songs that you know from those. You hear those songs and you think of the 60s. They're not kind of, I mean, they are great songs in their own right, but they're the kind of staple, the Rolling Stones, you know, they're the staple kind of bands and songs you use just to make people think of the 60s.
Yeah.
It works, and it's great, you know, don't get me wrong, I think it's all great music and it has its place.
But it has got a little smattering of 80s stuff as well. You've got some REM and
that's right, yeah.
Big Audio Dynamite as well. They play on the, you know, the title track and the end credits as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got sort of a good mix of 80s and 60s.
Although we're not sure exactly when it's set, are we? Because it starts.
Well, the title it comes up with 1989, I think, and then is it San Francisco? I think it says underneath it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it was released in 1990, so I think, well, so what? It's like last year. If it was set, 10 years before it was made, that's fine. Okay, I get why you would put up what year it's in, but it was probably filmed in 89, I imagine. So
yeah,
I don't know, it was a bit weird. I don't really get why.
Because they don't really, although they're referencing a lot about the 70s, about the late 60s, they're not really, apart from, I mean, there's a discussion, isn't there, about Reagan, and obviously they've lived through the Reagan years, so there's a little bit of a discussion about the 80s, and of course when Michael McKean and Richard Masur go into that bar as well, but apart from that, there's no real kind of, we're in the 80s, it's not that kind of film, so it's a bit of an odd opening, not quite sure why they do that.
I don't really know why.
I saw this quite a few years ago. I kind of go through. I do this thing where I'll find an actor and then I kind of go through their catalogue of movies. And I can't remember whether this was my Dennis Hopper list or my Kiefer Sutherland list. I think it was on my Kiefer Sutherland list. And yeah, I mean, there's obviously there's a few other notable faces. Paul Dooley.
Yeah, he plays like Kiefer Sutherland's boss.
Yeah.
And again, he's one of these recognisable guys that you see in lots of stuff.
There's Carol Kane in here, who we covered quite a few times. She's cropped up in a few of our films.
She was in Princess Bride.
She was in Scrooged.
Yeah.
And something else recently. I can't remember off the top of my head what that was. She's always good fun.
She's
a great little character, kind of character actor.
The other guy I recognise, actually, he's only got a tiny role in it, is Art Evans, who plays Barnes in Die Hard 2.
He's like he's on the train at the beginning. He's got one line.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he was even credited, but no, he's in there. I recognise, I'm a massive Die Hard fan, so I recognised him instantly.
I mean, I think this is one of those films. I mean, there's not a huge amount to say about the film. It's a very simple plot. It's a very it's a comedy. It's got some funny stuff in there. I laughed a few times. Like I said, I'd seen it a few years ago, and then I watched it again for this, and it's a bit cheesy at times. It's a bit silly and daft, but I think it's if you like those kind of throwbacks to the '60s and '70s, and if you were kind of, I don't know, maybe you grew up in that time, or you didn't like us, and you like to kind of see the old and the new joined together in that weird way. I mean, I personally think if you took out Dennis Hopper and Kiefer Sutherland and their relationship, it would be a bit of a kind of silly American comedy, I feel. Those two together on screen are always great. All the stuff they share together. There's a wonderful moment, like in the woods at night. I mean, it's basically like other films like Midnight Run, I think, which came out in the 80s. And
I mean, it's almost a little bit like Last Detail as well, which we talked about a few weeks
ago.
of
course, that's another one, And so it's that kind of, not quite buddy movie, but it's similar kind of buddy movie, but one's against the other kind of thing.
I mean, there's a lot, even stuff like 48 Hours where, you've got Cop and Crim sort of teaming up almost. So it's not exactly an original concept. It kind of didn't know, some parts it didn't really know what it wanted to be, whether it just wanted to be a straight out comedy, but then there are some sentimental bits in it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Which to me sort of slowed everything down a little bit. I don't know, and sort of the last sort of, the third act, I guess it kind of turned into your standard sort of chase movie, and it's like, well, I've seen this sort of thing before. So not perfect, just it's a fun little movie.
Yeah,
we particularly, like you said, I think the two leads, make it. They're watchable. And,
exactly.
And have some funny lines, and it's an entertaining watch.
And of course, they both turned up. I mean, obviously, Kiefer Sutherland is obviously famous for 24. Dennis Hopper turned up in the first series of 24. So if you're a big fan of 24 and you love Kiefer Sutherland on screen with Dennis Hopper and you want to see a little bit of that, but earlier on in their careers, or maybe not so early on in Dennis Hopper's career, go and check this film out for that. I mean, I think, that so it was directed by this Italian, Franco Amuri, who I don't know much about. I think he made 2 American films, this one being one of them, and he made some Italian films in the past. Mm-hmm. But check this out. This is good. I like these kind of Kevin Bacon links.
Right.
I see if I remember this. Right. So he started off life as an assistant director. He was assistant director on Fellini's City of Women. Mm-hmm. Then he was assistant director on a film called The Tempest, which was directed by Paul Mazursky, who also directed a film called Alice in Wonderland, starring Donald Sutherland, Kiefer Sutherland's father.
Right. Wow.
And Paul Mazursky was in 2 Days in the Valley that we covered.
So he was.
Utter useless fact, but interesting because you can link the two Sutherland, father and son.
That's made my brain
hurt. Made your...
So there you go.
Obviously, so I don't have it on DVD, and you don't have it on DVD, but it's on Amazon Prime, and that's why we're covering it. Because if you're in the UK, you can watch it for free.
Yep.
So if you don't know it, it's quite. I think it's quite an unknown film. This.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So I'd go in if you got an hour and a half or an hour and 47 minutes to kill. Actually.
There you go. Pretty precise.
Then go and stick with this one on. I don't. Is it available on DVD or?
It is. I mean, it was released a while ago, I think, in the US and over here on DVD. But I think it's out of print. I mean, I looked on Amazon. I think somebody in the US wanted $60 for it, but I looked on eBay and you could pick it up for it's not like chump change. It's a few quid, but it is available. Without breaking the bank. So if you really want to,
I wouldn't say it was. I probably wouldn't pay $60 for it.
No.
And that was Flashback. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button up there if you've enjoyed what you've watched, and don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. There's some other videos to check out over there. Come and find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and join us next week for another video.